Number 6077 X-ray Center.
Hello, it's Scott Manley here with something very different.
November 6077 X-ray, contact L Center 127.1.
October 4th, 2024. Air traffic controllers at Bakersfield have lost contact with an aircraft.
Hey, Bakersfield Sector 17. North, or south, I mean.
The aircraft in question is a King Air, which took off from Henderson, Nevada, and is headed to Monterey.
Bakersfield?
Can you try number, see if you have number 6077 X-ray? 6077
X-ray?
Yeah, 6077 X-ray.
And what frequency you want on?
127.1.
127.1.
Thanks.
So this video is made by using real air traffic control communications for the audio, and I've used real ADS-B data, plane tracking information, to model the location of the aircraft so you can see what the pilot saw.
17, Bakersfield, no response.
No response, thanks.
So this is flying across the country to Monterey, and as it does so, it moves in and out of range of different control centers on the ground, so it will be periodically handed off to new controllers. It's not uncommon for aircraft to get the frequencies wrong and be out of touch, and the controllers have to go and hunt them down.
17, can you see if you have November 6077 X-ray, 6077 X-ray?
Stand by. November 6077 X-ray?
Yeah, he came from me a long time ago.
All right.
Talon Flight 938, contact Josh Approach 124.55.
2455, Talon Flight 938.
These frequencies are of course shared between multiple pilots.
Hello, November 999 Lima Romeo is out of 27.3 to cross Joe's at 240.
999 Lima Romeo, sonar, descend and maintain full 200.
Maintain 200, 999 Lima Romeo.
This is 6077 X-ray, the pilot has passed out.
And that is not the call that air traffic control was hoping for.
Number 6077 X-ray, are you the co-pilot?
Yes, I am.
Okay, Roger. I'm declaring an emergency at this time. You want to land at Bakersfield?
Normally the pilot would be the one to declare an emergency, but in this case the controller does it.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure how to land.
Okay.
And this is the moment we realize just how big an emergency this is.
I'm in training.
Okay, 77 X-ray, Roger.
So yeah, this was a pretty big story. We had a fairly capable aircraft taking off from Henderson, Nevada with a pilot and his non-pilot rated wife. They were headed to Monterey following an IFR flight plan, and partway through, he dies. Like, he passes out and then he ultimately dies, and she's left in an aircraft that she is way more than she's capable of handling. And it's on autopilot, it's continuing on course, and of course, it has a limited amount of fuel.
This is 6077 X-ray. Please instruct.
Number 6077 X-ray, fly, maintain level 200. That's what you're doing now. Just fly present heading. We're working on something right now. Are you able? Okay, here we go. Number 6077 X-ray, contact LA Center now, 127.1.
So they're asking her to retune to 127.1 megahertz so they can stay in touch. And I think she's had enough experience in this to know how to operate the radios.
November 6077 X-ray, this is LA Center on guard. Contact LA Center now on 127.1.
Guard is 121.5. It's a special frequency for emergencies.
127.1.
So that's her reading back the frequency that she was given, and I think it's telling that she knows just enough about radio communications that she understood that Guard 121.5 was something that could be used to call for help, and she knows to read back her call sign and read back the instructions that she's given. And this is actually quite common in couples that fly together. Even if one isn't a pilot, the other one will learn to use the radios.
Center 5, take it back.
Say the call sign again?
Yeah, 755, take it back. We can help in any way if you need it.
Yeah, you guys are 100 miles opposite direction. She's over the Bakersfield area. Thanks for your help.
Broadcasting on the emergency frequency at 20,000 feet is going to get a lot of listeners out there. And, you know, if you're looking for somebody that is able to fly a plane, well, guess what? You're going to hear a lot of pilots out there that think they might be able to help.
Put her on a new frequency. Hopefully, that guy talking to her now, is a pilot and a flight instructor.
We're listening on the other radio. She's scared to death, obviously.
Yeah.
I'm an airline guy. If you need any help, we can help you.
Okay.
Center, this is 3049 Alpha. I have a flight department in Bakersfield. We operate King Airs. I can get you the number of a King Air captain if you want it.
3049 Alpha, say that again?
I operate a flight department out of Bakersfield. We have King Air pilots and captains in Bakersfield. I can get you a phone number if you need it.
Yes, give me that number, thanks.
So I should make it clear that controllers aren't required to be pilots.
3049 Alpha, yes. Can I have that phone number?
Yes, stand by.
And I'm pretty sure most pilots have never flown a King Air.
Okay, this is Courtney.
So given at this point the event is pretty much public knowledge, there's a bunch of pilots that are trying to be helpful and help the controllers find somebody that can teach this person how to fly this specific plane.
Affirmative. And if you don't get a hold of her, I'll give you another number.
Okay, we'll try that right now.
And yeah, I'll point out that this is redacted. There's a couple of phone numbers that we didn't want to share. I'm also skipping this forward a few minutes. I'm just cutting out mostly other unrelated air traffic control to get to the real story.
King Air 6077 X-ray.
King Air 77 X-ray, this is Los Angeles Center. I hear you loud and clear, and I am a flight instructor here to help you.
Okay, I'm in need of help right now.
So they're able to find a controller who is also a pilot and instructor.
Air 77 X-ray, I'm sorry, say that one more time, please, slower.
I need some help. The pilot has passed out.
Our 77 X-ray, Roger. Are you the only person on board the airplane right now?
Yes, I am. I'm sitting in the right seat. I know very little about flying the King Air.
Or 77 X-ray, Roger. Right now, I show you level 200. Do you know if the autopilot is on?
Flight level 200 is just 20,000 feet, by the way.
Yes, it is.
Or 77 X-ray, Roger. At this time, you are perfectly safe where you are. We're going to work some things down here and get back to you in a couple minutes, okay?
So the autopilot will mean that it won't crash right away.
Okay, thank you.
And November 77 X-ray, I'm going to keep talking to you. My name is Kevin. I am a flight instructor with a couple hours in a King Air, so I'm going to see what I can do to help you. My only question is, do you know if there's an oxygen mask near you, probably behind the seat?
The King Air is a pressurized aircraft capable of flying in the flight levels without the crew needing oxygen masks, but they will have them for emergencies.
I took the oxygen mask off the ceiling.
Okay, go ahead and see if you can put it over the pilot's nose and mouth as tight as you can, and let me know what happens over the next couple minutes.
So yeah, you want to get the pilot more oxygen. First of all, it's just good in a medical emergency. It might save their life, but maybe it gets them sufficiently out of their emergency that they wake up and they can, even if they can't fly, they know about the aircraft and they can assist the co-pilot and talk them through this situation.
And November 77 X-ray, while you're doing that, I believe you said you had some flying experience. You're learning how to fly the King Air right now?
Yes, very little, but I'm trying.
Okay. What is your pilot certifications? Are you commercial with multi-engine?
No, I'm just a student. I haven't flown for years.
Over 77 X-ray. Okay, not a problem.
To fly the King Air, the pilot's supposed to have a multi-engine rating, and they will have to have an instrument rating to fly up in the flight levels.
Over 77 X-ray, there are plenty of airports around, and are you able to see how many pounds or gallons of fuel you have left on board the airplane?
We have 8.5.
Roger.
Both engines.
Or 77 X-ray, okay, very good.
So those fuel readouts are in hundreds of pounds per tank, and it sounds like there's about 900 pounds in both tank. The King Air burns about 500 pounds per hour, so she has maybe 3.5 hours to figure this out.
The oxygen mask isn't working.
That's unfortunate, but if you're watching this video, you probably figured out by now that it wasn't that easy, otherwise I wouldn't be making this video.
Or 77 X-ray, Roger, we copy.
17 all over course.
Now I want to take a minute to comment on the aircraft cockpit that we've got here. This is the default King Air from X-Plane, and we don't actually know what the exact cockpit looks like, but based upon the comments that she makes, this sounds like it's pretty close. She was flying a 2003 King Air 90B. And if you look online, a lot of those have since been upgraded with all-glass panel. This one is running, it looks like, closer to the original hardware with a lot of steam gauge, but it does have, onboard autopilot and GPS navigation.
Or 77 X-ray, Roger. We're going to work on getting you lower out of the flight levels here momentarily. We're just looking up a picture of the cockpit of the airplane to familiarize myself. And do you see where the autopilot is? And if so, anything that says ALT, altitude, a knob?
The controller still doesn't have any idea of the layout of this specific King Air, but the autopilot is in the center console here. It's built by Collins.
Yes, I do.
He asked for an ALT knob, but there's only a button.
Okay, 77 X-ray. In between the two seats, below the cockpit panel, will be the thrust levers for the airplane, the two throttles quadrants for the airplane. Would you mind reducing those back approximately 3 inches?
That's pretty much what the throttle quadrant looks like.
I'm not sure where you're talking about.
And you might think this is really obvious, but there are 6 levers for 2 engines.
77 X-ray, we're trying to get you to descend the airplane, and in order to do so, we need you to reduce the power on the airplane so we can initiate a descent.
While the plane is currently on autopilot, most small aircraft autopilots don't have an ability to control the throttles.
Let me get my headset. I'm using his headset. It's cumbersome right now.
Okay, take your time whenever you're ready.
So the 3 levers on the King Air is, on the left side you have the primary throttles, again 1 for each engine. The 2 in the middle, those adjust the propeller pitch. If you push them forwards, then it has a low angle of attack. If you pull them back, they get a high angle of attack. Finally, the ones on the right, these are called condition, and they can be used to shut off the engine. They can be used to adjust the minimum idle speed, and you might use that, for example, if you're flying in on approach and you've got the throttles pulled back. You might want to set a higher minimum idle rates. If you need to then go around, you have the engine already running at a higher speed. A lot of this is not in modern turboprops.
Over 77 X-ray. If you are comfortable, our plan is to take you to the north of your current position and get the airplane safely on the ground at what's called Bakersfield Meadows Field. It's a long international airport runway, and there's a controller down there that has experience with the type of airplane you're in. How comfortable are you in maybe turning off the autopilot and trying to hand fly that airplane?
And this is a critical question, because as good as the autopilot is, it can't land the plane. She is going to have to hand fly this at some point, and the King Air is incredibly intimidating. It is a twin engine system, over 500 horsepower on each turbine engine. It's big, it has adjustable props, it has landing gear.
I could try.
She will have to.
Our 77 X-ray, Roger. There should be an AP disconnect either button on the control yoke that you can press or somewhere on the panel. Where you found the altitude and heading buttons, you should be able to turn the autopilot off. Do you see any of that?
So yeah, the easy way to disconnect the autopilot on this aircraft is there's a red button on the control yoke. Then you're hand flying the plane. On the autopilot unit, it's not quite as obvious. There's a button there that says AP ENG. That means AP engage, autopilot engage. When you push that again, it will disengage it. But turns out that the controller doesn't know what this autopilot looks like or how to use it. Therefore, he's just guessing.
November 77 X-ray, as you attempt to disconnect the autopilot, be aware the airplane will be trimmed for level flight, and so it might pitch up or pitch down on you. The nose might go up or down on you, so at that point you would just use your use the yoke in front of you to keep the airplane straight and level.
While it may seem obvious that disengaging the autopilot will leave you with manual control, it is less obvious that the autopilot might be pushing back against something. It might be holding the nose down or pulling the nose up, and as soon as you release it, the nose will go up or down in response as it relaxes back to its natural orientation in this setting.
November 77 X-ray, what is your name?
My name's Yvonne.
Okay, Yvonne, just want to make sure you're still with me. We'd like to get you to start turning the airplane to the right if you're able to do that.
So at this point, they've kind of flown past Bakersfield and it's off to the right. They would like them to turn, and they're in fact worried about the autopilot basically carrying on in a straight line until they're out of radio range. There have been cases of ghost aircraft continuing in autopilot until they crash.
Okay, I have to release the The autopilot, though, right?
Our 77 X-ray, yeah, that would probably be the best course of action. If you have some limited flying experience, do you feel comfortable hand flying the airplane with the control yoke?
I'm very limited.
Again, this is understandably very intimidating.
November 77 X-ray, Roger. We did look up a picture of that particular airplane you're in, and it appears that the autopilot controls are on that center quadrant down low in between the seats. Do you see any of those controls down to your left side?
So this is more or less what the center would look like. This is the Rockwell Collins APS 65 autopilot that was standard on King Air.
The autopilot controls?
Affirmative. We're trying to get you to turn off the autopilot, and we believe the controls to do so are on that center console where the throttle levers are, below that, in between the seats.
Okay, would it be HGZ?
Indeed it would. Yvonne gets it right first time.
I believe you said you were asking if it's APZ?
HDG.
HDG is a button that enables heading mode.
I believe that's altitude hold, and that's what's keeping you level right now. Do you see an AP off or AP disconnect?
And she's not going to see that because the button to disengage the autopilot is APENG.
I see APPR.
Yeah, that's for the approach. Okay. On your control column, on your control yoke, the steering wheel of the airplane, do you see anything that says AP disconnect, usually a red button?
Again, I'm pretty sure the big red button on the yoke is what would disconnect the autopilot, but in my experience, any control system that has a big red button, you want to know what it does before you push it.
I see disconnect, DSC.
On autopilot, DSC is for descent.
We believe that would be it, and so if you were to push that button, that would release the autopilot, we believe. At that point, you would be hand flying the airplane. If you're comfortable doing so, please push that button.
You can see how this can get confusing quickly.
So you want me to go lower altitude before I do the... No, I'm not that comfortable flying this by myself.
Okay. In that case, let's just stay where we're at and try to work with the autopilot. Do you see anything that says HDG with 3 numbers? You're probably going to see a number of like 260 or 270 right now with HDG.
Again, she already found that button, but she didn't find the control for it.
I see HDZ.
HDG as in golf?
Yes.
Okay, is that a knob?
No, it's a button. It's just a push button.
So again, this button will enable heading mode.
Okay. Do you see any sort of window that you can select a new heading, a new HDG?
The knob to select a new heading is here, but there's no window to display the number.
I'm not sure what you're talking about, a window.
Do you see a display in the cockpit on the panel that says HDG and then has a 3-digit number associated with it?
There's no 3-digit number, but there is a little magenta indicator that shows up in the horizontal situation indicator as you adjust the knob.
No, I don't see any. No, I see the HDG, but the numbers, I'm not sure what you're talking about.
Okay, Yvonne, I'm going to let another co-worker of mine who has piloting experience talk to you for a minute. His name is Sean.
So now I'm going to skip forward about 10 minutes because there's like another couple of controllers and pilots that come on and none of them can really figure it out. And it's kind of frustrating to listen to.
Hey, Yvonne, can you do me a favor and make sure that oxygen mask is on you?
Now this, however, is an important question because she's flying at 20,000 feet and if the aircraft wasn't properly pressurized, she might be getting confused and that could be contributing to being unable to figure out what to do. But more importantly, I think, the controls for the pressurization of this aircraft are right down in that center console next to the autopilot. It's entirely possible she could depressurize the aircraft by accident. That would make a bad situation worse.
Yvonne, were you able to locate your oxygen mask and put it on?
There have been a few cases of jets at high altitude that lost pressure, everyone on board passes out, probably dies, and the plane continues on autopilot until it crashes.
But if she does that, she's going to have to switch to mask on there's a switch, and that's going to start a whole new set of issues.
So that's another pilot that understands the King Air a little better. And despite the concerns over the oxygen, it seems that it would require changes to the communication system that would make things harder.
Yvonne, how are you doing up there? This is Kevin again.
I can't talk to you if I have the oxygen mask on, and I can't have the headset on.
Or 77 X-ray. Yvonne, we understand that. We need to try to get you turned around, though. That's what we're trying to do.
So despite the concerns about oxygen, they're just going to have to live with the risk and hope that everything works until they can get her down to a lower altitude. At this point, the aircraft is almost halfway between Bakersfield and Monterey, and they really need to get that turned around.
November 77 X-ray, Yvonne, this is Kevin again. Up on the top of the instrument panel, do you see any knobs up there?
Okay, on the instrument panel. Okay.
The altitude selector, by the way, that is in the middle of the panel. It's above those two screens in the center, and it's currently showing 20,000 for 20,000 feet.
Or 77 X-ray. If you can at all turn the airplane using a knob that says HDG or CRS, course or heading, we would like you to try that.
Okay, so HDG, hit that.
There is also the danger that if you go into heading mode and you lose contact, she's going to keep heading out over the Pacific until it runs out of fuel.
You want me to press HDG?
Or 77 X-ray. Is that button lit up right now?
The buttons don't illuminate on this autopilot.
Above it has ALT.
But the autopilot modes are lit up above those buttons. ALT shows it's in altitude mode.
Or 77 X-ray, yeah, push the HDG button and let me know what the airplane does after that.
So the idea is that she's going to hit heading mode, and then hopefully they'll be able to figure out how to fly the plane just using the heading knob to point it in the right direction. And so here's the thing. She hits that button, and the plane begins to turn, and we feel a small moment of victory.
We're turning.
Okay, 77 X-ray, we do see you turning to the left. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, is the airplane appearing to stay level?
It's level.
Okay, very good. We see you turning to the left, and do you see a 3-digit number near that heading button to tell me what heading it will be turning to?
And once again, I come back to asking about these numbers, which we know that she won't be able to find.
A 3-digit number. I'm not sure. Where am I looking at?
Not only that, but the turn basically stops after about 10 degrees.
Or 77 X-ray, we see that you have now leveled the wings back out on a new heading. Do you see the wings level?
As it turns out, the new heading is more or less pointed directly at Monterey.
Yes, I see that.
All right, so do me a favor and continue the turn to the left. We don't really need you on a heading. We can just tell you continue turn, stop turn, continue turn, stop turn, if you're okay with that.
On the old information.
Can you continue turn left?
That is correct. Continue your turn to your left.
So the controller's working on the assumption that she has some control, but the truth is, the turn was not as intentional as they imagined.
It's not turning.
All right, very good. We will let you know when we want you to stop your turn. Just keep the turn going and make sure that the turn is nice and comfortable for you.
I have no control.
Presumably it just turned to whatever heading was already in the system.
What button did you press to make your initial turn to the left?
HDG.
And if you press that again, what happens?
And I think this is a mistake on the part of the controller, because if you hit heading again, it basically clears heading mode, and now it'll fly in a straight line until another direction mode is engaged.
Okay, so Yvonne, Kevin and I were talking, and we think that your GPS was set up to fly a specific route prior to you hitting the HDG button. And then once you hit the HDG button, the autopilot flew to a specific heading that was pre-selected that is not on your course. So I think that it was just a coincidence that you turned to the left. And if you go back to the instruments that we were looking at before, right above the yoke, underneath the attitude indicator, if you spin that dial, push it in and spin it, or just spin it, that might be the turn that we need you to do. Now that you're on heading mode, it'll work.
Again, if you don't know the autopilot, this is confusing.
Okay, yeah, it's still turning, I think.
Even if you did find the correct heading knob, which is near the autopilot, and then adjusted at this point, it would ignore it because the autopilot is not in heading mode anymore. You'd have to push heading to re-engage that.
Yvonne, are you turning?
Yes, I can't turn right. It's on its own. I can't, I am not, the plane is on its own.
Okay, so right now the GPS is following a predetermined route that the pilot had put in his flight plan. And I think that's what's happening. Is there any way that you can take manual control of the airplane so that we are not on that route?
And so I think this is the moment where she pushes the red button on the yoke and takes control of the aircraft, despite the fact that she knows that she is not qualified for anything this big, this powerful. It's the thing that she has to do, and it starts a gentle turn to the right.
17 Victor Alpha, do you want me to stay in the South Valley here?
17 Victor Alpha is another pilot in the area that had been trying to help out.
17 Victor Alpha, negative. If you, if you continue on, that's on you.
Well, I can help any way I can, but I'm not. It's a hard one.
Yeah, it's hard. I had to look up the internet to figure out how to do all this.
King Air 1, Victor Alpha, Roger. By the way, the Bakersfield altimeter 29901.
901, and
All right, Yvonne, it looks like you're turning back to the right. Is that you doing that, or is that the autopilot?
Yes, I did it.
Okay, that's great. I think that is perfect. Keep coming to the right. And Yvonne, are you still level with the horizon, or are you descending or climbing?
She's staying level. She's doing a great job.
I took the ALT off.
Okay. Keep coming to the right. Keep coming to the right. Maintain your current altitude. You're doing a great job.
Now, around about this time, there's another airplane that starts to come into the scene. It's called Troy 315, and they had been flying up Highway 101. They are a Customs and Border Patrol aircraft, a Super King Air equipped with all sorts of fancy Department of Defense sensors, to basically enforce Customs and Border. They are a very similar type of aircraft, and they're able to get up close, and they actually start coming up in formation with Yvonne in this King Air.
Yvonne, you're doing a great job. Keep coming with that turn. You're almost done turning.
So the first priority is to keep her turning around and get her pointed roughly in the direction of Bakersfield. They're like 100 miles out at this point, and by the time she gets there, she's going to have to have figured out how to land this thing, and that will include deploying the landing gear, flaps, and slowing down, and of course losing altitude.
Hey Yvonne, we have another King Air that's directly below you. He's about 3 miles behind you and about 5,000 feet below. He's going to fly up next to you, and he'll get on frequency with us, and he'll help guide you back the way we need to go. Yvonne, it's looking like you're descending. Are you able to level off, get the wings back level with the horizon, and put the nose back level with the horizon?
I have a lot of resistance.
That's the autopilot. So right now the autopilot is on. If you press the autopilot disconnect, you will be hand flying the airplane, but we'll have a lot more control over the airplane as well.
I've honestly lost count of how many times they've tried to disconnect the autopilot.
I disconnect.
Okay, you disconnected the autopilot, so what I want you to do is have the yoke in your hands with both hands. Make your hands parallel to each other, parallel to the ground. Your wings will be level, and then you want to pull back slightly on the yoke so that your nose is pointing at the horizon.
With the autopilot working, she was just slowly getting further and further away, but with it disconnected, things could rapidly go wrong.
I have a lot of resistance. Well, what should I do with that?
The trim wheel probably is the problem. So there should be a trim button or a trim wheel to the left of the throttles. It's a big black wheel that you need to push down, spin down towards the floor.
With the autopilot disengaged, she's now losing altitude at a speed of about 1,000 feet per minute, and that is actually increasing her speed.
Were you able to find the trim wheel to the left of the throttles?
The trim wheel is a device that lets you make small adjustments to the pitch so you don't have to constantly hold the stick back or push it forwards.
Yvonne, it looks like you were able to stop your descent. That is great. If you're able to get your wings level, so we stop turning, and hold on to the elevator, the yoke in front of you, you're going to either pull it back to stop your descent or push it forward a little bit to stop your climb.
The descent is causing minor concern because they need to make sure the aircraft doesn't get too fast and damage itself. And of course, if she can't stop the descent, she's going to eventually run out of altitude.
Yvonne, are you still there?
Yes, I am.
Okay, were you able to get the trim located and adjusted so we can stop our descent?
You have to consider that on one hand she probably feels a need to hold onto the controls to fly the aircraft, but on the other hand they want her to look around the cockpit and find something to make it easier.
Yvonne, we're still descending a little bit, so if you haven't found the trim wheel yet, do me a favor, take a look at it on the left side of the throttle, and you're going to spin it towards the ground to get the trim to stop the descent, and once you are able to do that, let me know.
In the last minute or so, she's lost 2,000 feet. She's now dropping out of the flight levels, dropping out of Class A airspace.
Yvonne, from here, it looks like you did stop your descent. Can you confirm that for me?
Yes.
Okay, that's fantastic. I'm really glad you're able to stop the descent. You're at a great altitude right now. You don't need to worry about climbing or descending. So if you're able to maintain your current altitude, that's all we need from you. Are you able to do that right now?
She probably still has too much power in and is very likely to climb.
I could try.
Perfect. You're doing a great job. Now, what I'd like you to do, now that you're stable, wings level, and you're not descending anymore, I'd like you to begin a slow, gradual turn to the right. And remember, as you begin that right-hand turn, the plane will want to descend a little bit because as it loses that upward lift. So you might need to pull back a little bit on the elevator, on the yoke, and as you turn, maintain your altitude.
And at this point, we see a small increase in the rate of turn, and I think this is where she's really starting to begin flying the plane.
Troy 315, LA Center.
Go ahead.
Troy 315, the King Air is at your 1 o'clock and 3 miles southeastbound. If you are able to, they're currently level at level 180. You can come up to their altitude.
All right, we'll try to come up to level 180, Troy 315.
Yvonne, the other King Air is on frequency right now. They're going to turn to come up next to you. You're doing a really good job on your heading. You can stop your turn, so get your wings level so we no longer turn. You did climb a little bit, which we don't need anymore. You can put the nose back towards the horizon, so we stop climbing.
Yeah, notice that after descending, she's now climbing again. She has a lot of power in those engines, hasn't throttled back.
Once that Victor Alpha is going to start a VFR descent.
Victor Alpha, roger. Yvonne, were you able to get the wings level and the nose pointed at the horizon again?
Yes, I have.
All right, you're doing a fantastic job. Can you do me a favor and look on the airspeed indicator and tell me what that says?
While the ground speed is about 240 knots, the airspeed will be lower because of lower air pressure.
159.
159, okay, that's great. Now remember, if you pitch up, your airspeed will go down, and if you pitch down, your airspeed will go up. So every time you go up in your attitude, when you pull the aircraft back and you go up, you're going to slow down. And if you push the aircraft over, you're going to speed up. Are you familiar with that concept?
Yes.
15 Bakersfield V4.0.
Okay, so right now you're doing an absolutely perfect job. Your wings are level, your altitude is level, your airspeed is good. We're drifting a little bit to the left, so if you could come back towards the right a little bit, and we're going to get you back towards Bakersfield.
So now she's flying it, you can hear the controller acting like a flight instructor, trying to give her basic ideas about how the aircraft should behave, because she has to do the flying.
Now, Yvonne, I know you're flying a King Air, which is a twin-engine turboprop, but it's a very docile, very easy-to-fly airplane, and you're doing a fantastic job. As long as those throttle levers for the left engine and the right engine are right next to each other, it's going to behave just like a single-engine airplane. So you don't need to worry about the fact that it's a twin engine. You're doing a great job flying it. You are pointing up a little bit too much, so if you could push the nose over just a little bit, because we are climbing more than we need to.
This is basically a high-altitude, high-power, high-stakes flying lesson. One thing that's critical to understand is that this is a multi-engine aircraft with the engines out on the wing, and if there's any difference in the thrust, that causes a yaw, which can very quickly lead to a loss of control. When you do multi-engine training in an aircraft, you actually spend most of the training flying on one engine to show that you can handle those emergency situations. Yvonne very likely has some experience in single-engine aircraft, and she needs to make sure this plane flies like a single-engine aircraft. Therefore, when she moves the thrust levers, she has to make sure that they both move together, they stay close together. And they're well aware of the fact that if she runs out of fuel, then one engine will probably fail before the other, there will be an asymmetric yaw, and that will probably lead to a loss of control.
Yvonne, how are you doing? Are you able to keep the wings level and the nose straight? Is that something they're able to do right now?
LA 15, Oakland 10, Old Line.
That's right.
You're doing a great job. Hand flying it is no problem. You got this.
So I think it's fine to skip forward a whole lot till she starts having to deploy flaps and landing gear.
You want me to put my flaps on?
Yeah, I just wanted you to do the first notch of flaps. It should be about 10 degrees, maybe 15 degrees. Nothing major, but we need to put the flaps down so that we can slow down the aircraft while we descend.
So now this is a critical moment. Dropping the flaps will change the way the plane flies, and she's been used to it flying a particular way for the last half hour or so, but this will make the wings produce more lift. It could produce a bump in the initially, and it could produce long-term changes that she's not quite adapted to, so he has to be very careful.
Yvonne, how's your flap situation coming?
They're on.
Okay, and what number are they showing? Is there an indication to say that they're 15, 20, 10 degrees?
Spoiler, as far as I can tell, there's no such indicator in this design.
Now, Yvonne, your airspeed, can you tell me what your airspeed is?
With the extra drag, they're going to slow down.
130 knots.
Okay, now that the flaps are down, you are slowing down a lot, so increase power a little bit so we don't slow down too much. We don't want to go below 100 knots.
Ideally, they want the plane flying that it's fast enough, that it's easy enough to control, but not so fast that it's going to damage the flaps.
Yvonne, your heading is looking really good. Your altitude is looking really good. I just want to make sure we don't go too slow. You can stop your turn and continue your descent. Make sure your speed is around 120 to 130. If your speed goes too low, we can add power so that we don't slow down too much. If it goes too high, we can reduce power. Now, Yvonne, you're turning a little bit too much to the left. We want to slowly start coming back to the right. I turned you away from Bakersfield Airport because we were a little high based on your location. And now that we're pointing away from Bakersfield, we are continuing our descent, but we need to come back towards Bakersfield. So if you could start a right-hand turn. And your altitude is looking really good, Yvonne. You're currently showing 7,800 feet. We don't need to descend too much at this point because we are away from the airport, and we're turning back towards the airport to the right. You're doing a great job. Add a little bit of power so we stop descending as much as we are. There you go. Keep coming to the right if you could, and add just a little bit of power so we don't descend too much. Yvonne, are you with me?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so make sure you add a little bit of power. We want to keep the flaps down so we stay slow, but we don't want to descend too much more, so I need you to add power, okay?
Okay, like 150?
Well, we want the speed to be up towards 130, but I don't want you pushing the nose down to increase speed. I'd like you to add power so that we can increase speed. And right now it looks like your altitude is leveling off, which is great. You're at 6,400 feet. That's a great altitude. If you could stay there, make sure you add power to stay at your altitude.
So now as she levels off, watch the speed. The aircraft really starts to slow down here because she's been used to flying in one configuration and that's changed.
There you go. You slowed down your descent. That's good. We want to make sure you stay level. Right now you're at 6,000 to 6,100 feet. Can you stay level at 6,000 feet?
The slow descent was helping maintain speed.
And don't forget to add power so that we don't lose airspeed while we level off, okay?
Without that extra power, the airspeed is just going to keep dropping, and potentially it could lead into a stall.
That's perfect. You're level at 6,000 feet. And can you tell me what your airspeed is, Yvonne?
According to my estimates, I see the speed getting as low as 100 knots during this moment.
Yvonne, you got to add power. We're going a little too slow. Make sure you add power, Yvonne.
To be clear, I only had latitude and longitude and had to derive the airspeed. There's probably like a headwind at this point, which is making it slower than it actually was.
Yvonne, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, are you able to add power so our airspeed doesn't get too low?
Yes, 132.
Okay, that's absolutely perfect. Make sure you keep that power setting in so we don't slow down too much. I want you to begin a slow right-hand turn and try to stay level at 6,000 feet.
So now again, I'm going to skip forward a couple of minutes to when she has to put the gear down.
Okay, Yvonne, what I would like you to do is on the left side of the throttle quadrant, there's a gear lever. It's a white circle, and I'd like you to push that down. You might have to pull it out and then push it down, but we want to get that gear down, which is going to slow us down. And once we slow down, we want to point the nose a little bit towards the ground because the aircraft will start slowing down. And by pushing the nose towards the ground, we're going to prevent ourselves from slowing down too much. Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay. We're turning back to the left, so make sure that our wings are level and find that gear lever.
So now she's been hand flying the plane fine with flaps, but she needs to make another configuration change for landing.
Let me know when you're able to get the gear down.
And this can be kind of dangerous because she has to reach over to the left and there's a little gear lever right here which needs to be pulled out and pulled down.
Now, Yvonne, once the gear comes down, you're going to feel some bumps and shakes as the aerodynamics of the airplane change. So don't be alarmed that you're going to, feel those shakes. The airspeed will start to slow down, so we're going to have to push the nose over a little bit. How are you feeling?
And there is a real danger because essentially you're going heads down in the cockpit, not looking outside, and it's very easy to have the plane roll over while you're distracted looking down at this gear lever that's out of sight.
Yvonne, can you talk to me?
Get the gear down.
I cut you off, Yvonne. Can you say that again?
I cannot get the gear down.
What's happening when you pull on the gear lever?
Decline it.
Got it.
You got it. Do you have 3 green indicators on the panel?
I'm good. I got the gear down, but I have to get...
Okay, now that the gear is down, I'd like you to push the nose over a little bit because you're climbing again, and we need to get you descending for Bakersfield. Bakersfield is, if you're familiar with the 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock sort of navigation, it's at your 11 o'clock and about 10 miles.
I like the fact that he said 11 o'clock and then realised that she might not know what he was talking about, so he had to explain 12 o'clock and then 11 o'clock.
Yvonne, can you turn back towards the left for me?
So at this point they're headed south towards Bakersfield Airport and the city of Bakersfield as well.
There you go. I see you're descending, Yvonne, and it looks like you're turning back towards the left. We just need a slight turn to the left. We're looking for the airport outside.
This is California's Central Valley and it's mostly agriculture.
There you go. Your heading is perfect, Yvonne. You don't need to turn any further to the left. Your altitude is looking good, and it looks like we're speeding up a little bit. Can you reduce the power on the throttles? Remember,
controlling airspeed isn't just about controlling your throttles. You also have to control your pitch.
We want to keep that airspeed around 130 to 120 at this point.
Flying a plane straight and level and at a constant airspeed is a skill that you need to learn, and Yvonne is obviously having to learn in real time. The plane is trimmed so that it's stable. If it goes too fast, its nose comes up and it gains altitude and slows down, but she needs to get control of all of this.
Yvonne, your airspeed is looking really good. Your altitude is a little high. Can you start your descent while keeping the airspeed where it's at?
She's going through these constant oscillations where she's exchanging airspeed for altitude and vice versa.
There you go, Yvonne. Keep coming down. You're currently at 6,800 feet. The elevation of Bakersfield Airport is only 100 feet, so we have about 500 feet. So we have about 6,200 feet to go. And your airspeed is looking good. Your altitude's looking good. The airport itself is going to be at your 1 o'clock and about 8 miles right now.
So you should be able to see the airport right above the right wing.
Yvonne, are you able to look outside and look for the airport?
Yes, I see.
You see the airport?
By the way, the airfield looks correct, the roads look correct, but the area immediately below her, that doesn't look right. I think that's an oil-producing area in Kern County.
Yes, I see the airport.
Okay, great. I want you to point the nose at the airport, and you can bring the throttles back a little bit so we can continue our descent. Now, I want you to know that as you continue your descent, I can't see you, but the pilots at the tower are able to see you, so they're going to take over and guide you in. Is that okay?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I think the pilots are going to come on now. You can see the airport, keep the nose pointed at the airport, and keep descending.
You can see how quickly things are going. It's flying at 3 miles a minute. Things are happening fast.
Hi, Yvonne. This is John at Bakersfield. How are you?
I'm okay.
Looks like you're doing really well lining up with the runway. Do you see the runway?
I should also point out, I don't know how tall Yvonne was or what her seat setting was, and this viewpoint is actually a little bit high. She might have been too low at this point to actually see over the cowling of the aircraft and see the runway.
Yvonne, do you have the runway in sight at Bakersfield?
I have it. On my screen I have Bakersfield. But
Can you see it out of the front windscreen? It should be off of your right side.
Looking down, you have to appreciate that the city of Bakersfield is right next to the airport, and if something had gone wrong and as a setting up she'd lost control, there was a real chance that this aircraft could have gone into the local housing or businesses and caused casualties on the ground. Thankfully, that didn't happen.
Can you see the airport off of your right side, Yvonne?
it was under my wing.
She's on the right side of the plane, but she can't look down at the airport because the wing is in the way.
Passing it up.
Okay, can you start a turn to the left?
Now, according to the weather, the wind was from 260 degrees. The runway is at 300 degrees, so you would normally want to approach from the south. But in this case, they actually want her to come around back to the north for her approach.
Do you have the nose pointed towards the ground slightly still, Yvonne?
Yes, I do.
I've got you in sight over the tower.
Yeah, this scenery looks a bit more accurate from this altitude, and you can see the Kern River there.
Keep the nose pointed down as you are. What is your current airspeed?
She's still going a bit fast because she's descending.
149.
All right, that's just fine. You can leave the power where it is and just keep coming down. I see that you're in a left turn now.
Now, this next moment, the turns look pretty steep. I'm not sure how realistic that is.
You can keep that left turn going.
Because the data that we have is just altitude and latitude and longitude, so we're trying to figure out the turn rate.
And now the airport will be off of your left side.
There's a simple rule that tells you for a given speed and a given turn rate how steeply the aircraft needs to bank. That's something we can derive from the laws of physics. These extra steep turns could be simply that she's trying to keep the airport in sight and looking around and not tracking her bank.
Yvonne, the airport's right off your right side.
It's a lot easier to fly a plane if you're just looking straight ahead.
I see it. Thank you.
Okay, Yvonne, as you make this left turn, okay, you can fly over the top of the runway towards the west.
So Bakersfield has two parallel runways. The runways are 12 and 30 for the opposite directions, and then there's left and right. So they're going to try and bring her in on 12 left because that is 10,000 feet long and 150 feet wide. 12 right is only 7,700 feet and 100 feet wide.
As you cross over the field, in about 20 seconds, you'll make a right turn back towards the north to parallel the runway, northbound. Your altitude looks good.
In fact, her altitude and speed looks good. She's clearly been working those throttles. I also presume that she left the propeller pitch at cruise.
Are your torque settings at about 10 right now?
And of course the other important thing was that since it was a big enough airport, it had its own dedicated emergency services, and they of course were out on the runway ready to go.
Yvonne, keep the right turn going to parallel the runway towards the north. It will be a heading of 300.
Tower, please be advised there's a Troy 315 behind the King Air, behind Evans.
Again, Troy 315 is one of these DHS King Air, which is used for a bunch of law enforcement duties.
Yvonne, make a slight turn back to the left.
And also there was a police helicopter which was flying circles in the area. Obviously they weren't chasing after the aircraft because it could go a whole lot faster, but they were ready.
All right, as you continue your right turn, line up with runway 12. You're looking for about 120 knots. If you need to pull the power back, about 700 foot per minute descent, 110 to 120 knots.
So now she's made it around to the north end of the field. Altitude is now down to 1,800 feet, which is only 1,300 feet above the ground, but they're facing the wrong way. They have to turn the aircraft around and try to get lined up with the runway. And this can actually be, can be tricky for amateur pilots because your aircraft doesn't stop moving forwards. You turn around and then you figure out that you're not quite lined up, so you decide to take another turn at it. And
Yvonne, what is your current speed?
122.
Perfect. Keep it at least 120. Come back towards the runway. You'll have to turn before you get to the runway in order to line up on the runway.
So look, you can see that she can sort of see down the runway here, but this is not a position that is good for landing. If you try to force it in here, that would be disastrous. So wisely continues to turn around, getting a better idea of where the runway is in relation to the surrounding terrain. While this aircraft came with a Garmin GPS that potentially had a moving map, I'm not sure she was using it. I think she was largely looking outside and trying to figure out where everything was.
Yvonne, do you see the freeway out your right?
Yes, I do.
Can you go along the freeway for a little bit? Keep it on your right-hand side for now.
When you're having trouble flying a plane at low altitude, the last thing you want to be doing is going heads down to mess around with the GPS unit.
Yvonne, can you make the wings level now at your current heading? Just level the wings so you can stop your turn. All right, start a turn to the right, back towards the runway.
Hey, Tower, I think you might want to let her go out a little bit further so she has more time to set up on the runway.
Sector 4 and low point up.
So they're taking her a little further out this time, and they're going to turn around over Highway 99, which runs parallel to the runway, so it's actually a really good visual checkpoint.
Yvonne, look out of your right window, and you'll see the runway there. Big, dark runway. Big, dark strip. Do you see that? Off your right window.
At this point, it's like a big, long right base entry to the runway. She's about 800 feet above the terrain, a little low, but in control of the plane.
Your speed's looking good if you see the runway off your right. Keep a right turn to line up on top of the runway.
Yes, I see it.
All right, keep that runway and try and put it right underneath the airplane and keep the airplane coming down towards it.
This is it. She's getting ready to commit to the landing.
That 120 knots is great.
Again, according to the weather, she had an 8-knot rear-quartering tailwind pushing her to the left and giving her a little extra speed on final. But it was better to do it this way than do all these turns and approaches over houses.
Just keep the nose of, once you roll out on the runway, keep your right turn coming to line up straight with the runway.
Not to criticize, but she is a bit right of the center line right now, but I'm sure she'll fix that once she gets over the threshold.
It's the big dark strip.
For comparison, this is about twice the speed I would normally land at. There are airliners that land at these speeds. The King Air has 2 big turbines, and it will accelerate quickly if you let it.
All right, keep your speed at 120 and start pulling the throttles towards close. Pulling back.
Now, at this point, we actually kind of lose the ADS-B data. We do get some points as it goes onto the runway, but this is largely reconstructed based on guesswork. What we do know is that she does successfully get it down on the runway, and while she does ultimately roll off the runway, the plane is largely intact, and this is an excellent first landing and a very happy ending for this very, very tense story.
Close the throttles, Yvonne. All the way back. Pulling back towards you and touch both of the brake pedals with your toes.
I'm actually kind of surprised that they didn't explain to her how to stop the aircraft before it got on the ground.
Go ahead and bring the airplane to stop. The right 2 levers, the ones closest to you, are fuel levers. Close them towards you.
Again, there are 3 pairs of levers. The ones that are on the left are the 2 that control the throttle. That's what she's mostly been working. The ones in the middle control the propeller pitch, which increases the efficiency at altitude. And the ones on the right, those are the ones that actually will turn off the engine. You have to pull those all the way back to fuel shutoff.
The levers closest to you.
I can imagine the emergency vehicles chasing after her at this point.
Red levers closest to you. Bring them towards you to cut them off.
So anyway, yeah, the reason I created this is because I created this software which would translate ADS-B data into simulation data for replay. And I mostly used it to tell stories of terrible crashes, and I wanted to have a story where there was a happy ending.
Good job, Yvonne.
And this could have easily gone the other way.
Thank you.
You're my hero, Yvonne.
Bye.
Hey, well done, Yvonne.
Woo!
Yvonne, you're my hero.
But among the celebration, you have to remember her husband just died.
We need an ambulance.
Bakersfield.
Come out here.
Yeah, Yvonne, you got a lot of people heading here right now. They'll be there in a second.
I'm Scott Manley. Fly safe.